Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to have you because your name is literally the Quantum Mom, and
It literally.
yeah, and quantum health. You know, one of my favorite implications for it, when if we were to apply it, is yeah, it helps me, right? That's great, but the best thing is that my kids are gonna grow up with this. And when I compare it to the environment I grew up in, man, I can't help but think that they're just going to be little rock stars when they grow up. Because
Right.
when I look back at how I grew up, it's kind of crazy because tech was everywhere, Wi-Fi, computers, school. 7:30 to 3 or whatever.
Mhm.
Like I look back and I'm like, I'm not sure why it wasn't worse. I'm glad I'm as capable as I am now, but I'm also aware that I could have been much more capable had I been in a more supportive environment. So the implications for the future are staggering when it comes to quantum health, but it's super obscure, right?
Right.
How did you come to this? And because you come across carnivore, plant based, or whatever. This is a little different because when I came to it, it kind of solved all that stuff. Why is this paradigm specifically special, and what drives you to keep spreading the message?
Well, the paradigm is so special. The whole, quantum principles, quantum biology perspective it's ultimately it's foundational. This is, I tell people I believe I've sort of come into the fountain of truth, essentially,
Yeah.
and it within my own life, within my own health, i I found it to be the thing that really changed everything. And for some reason, everything about it, every time I listened to Dr. Jack Kruse, uh, every cell in my body resonated as this is the truth. And I just kept going back to his work. I would sort of drift away from it for a little bit and ultimately would always find my way back. And I actually told Jack that, Jack is Rome. All roads lead to Jack, essentially. Because, most of us that sort of found that work, the where he basically took the work of all of the the majors within this realm and brought it together. Like it's sort of like a beautifully curated collection
Hmm.
of truth. And when I had I would call it a minor health crisis. I had some weight gain that essentially didn't make any sense to me without changing food, without changing workouts, all of the things that we're told are the drivers of your metabolic health. I wasn't getting anywhere. I had profound changes in my own weight and couldn't get any answers, and ultimately went back into Dr. Kruse's work very deeply and understood what I had done. I had essentially
Yeah.
broken my circadian rhythm. And, my body was basically telling me there's a problem and you had better take care of it. And so I did, and I got very, very serious at that time. I had been somewhat, into it, but I got very serious when that was my experience, when I basically gained 40 pounds like that. And, on a small frame, that's a little alarming. And, doctors were looking at me, functional medicine doctors were looking at me saying, everything's fine. Labs are fine. Everything is fine. And essentially looking at me like I was a little crazy. But I intuitively knew something is not right and I have to figure it out. And so, that's essentially what sort of happened with me. And then I really fully understood the importance of light on our biology. And I got very, very serious within my household with my children. I had always, like I said, I had always, sort of dabbled in it. My kids have worn blue blockers since they were little. They always had like the little sort of yellowy orange Uvex glasses. I was a bit less serious about it for myself. That, not anymore. I would say probably the past 8 years, I'm very strict with my light environment. And so that it was basically my own N of one that really showed me your light environment is vitally important to your health, to your metabolic health, to your mental health, to your cognitive health. And so, I got very, very serious. And my kids today, being 18 and 22, the famous, saying in this house is it's a non-negotiable. There's zero room for negotiation. We could talk about food all day. We could negotiate about food all day. Light, there is no negotiating.
Because it's first principles, right?
Exactly.
Let's talk about your kids, because they probably grew up very strangely compared to the other households. They probably had to do weird things, and their friends were probably like, "Why does your mom make you do that?" or something along those lines. And
Right.
can you let's flesh out how your kids grew up and how it's kind of different. How you took certain steps and you kept at it. What did you do in what areas? And how have you seen that fruit ripen?
So today my boys are 18 and 22. Intuitively, when they were babies, by the grace of God, I just intuitively felt as though sunlight was good for them, even though the pediatrician would ream me every time we went, because my boys were these little platinum blonde, brown skinned, babies. And my husband is Portuguese, so my kids, have very good melanin, which I'm thankful for. And so, just intuitively, my kids grew up running around the yard naked, barefoot, in the sun all summer long. And then I worked very little when they were small. And so the 2 days that I did work, they would be with my in-laws, which I also feel like, that family, that sort of generational family, is also part of the quantum family, right? And so they got to spend a good amount of time with my in-laws, and my in-laws just did the same thing. It was easier for them. They had a pool, and it was easier for them to just let the kids run around naked and swim all day and, eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner outside. It was just easier. And, that was the way that my kids were raised in it. And it was a wonderful way for them to grow up. And thankfully, they're at the ages that they were not part of the group of children today that have access to cell phones in elementary school. Both my boys did not have access to a cell phone until high school. They were, the oldest of all of their friends to ever have access to a cell phone. And that was always very, very limited. When that did happen, it was very controlled and very, very limited. Same thing with video games. My boys did not have access to video games when they were very young. I did allow them. My oldest saved his money for 3 years, his own money, and he did purchase a PlayStation gaming system. But again, that was very controlled. That was very strict. They could only play those games on Saturday mornings from 9 until 12, and that was it. Weekends, no. I mean, weekdays during the school week, absolutely not. Summer vacations, no. They had no access to video games through summer vacations or school vacations. And other parents would say to me, how did you do that? And I was like, what are you talking about? How did I do that? I'm the parent. I'm the one making these decisions. And none of their friends' parents ever felt as though they could sort of implement those tight constraints. But I did it. That's the way that it was from day one. And my kids have always had very good circadian rhythm. My son Logan, I remember him being little, and I would shut the blinds in his room, and he would say to me, "No, mommy, don't shut those, because I wake up as the sun comes up, and that's how I like it." And I thought, okay, and so yes, I paid attention to food. I was, sort of very strict about what they ate. Everything was organic. Everything was local. We have some wonderful organic farms here. All of our proteins are sourced from a local regenerative farm that does an absolutely beautiful job at raising the animals in a humane and healthy way. So my kids have always, had access to good nutrient dense foods. With my, professional background, nutrition, was a big part of what my degree is in. So, that was something that I always paid attention to. Sarah Kleiner and I joke that, when your kids are babies, or sort of when you start into this, it's like it starts with plastic, and it starts with you saying, I have to get the plastics out of the house, right?
Yeah.
And then it just goes to a whole different place. But and I was also very, very focused on, the Weston A. Price way of
Mm-hmm.
eating. I was a member of their group. That's actually how I came to meet Jack Kruse for the first time, was at a Weston A. Price sponsored event at the Vermont 2017 talks. So, and which was hysterical because I had my youngest son with me. We went up together for that weekend for those talks. And when we walked in, they were handing out blue blocking glasses to everyone. And my youngest son just looked at me and he said, "You're amongst your people." So
Yeah.
he had never known anyone else outside of our home that used blue blocking glasses. So, for him to sort of see that, he was like, "Oh, okay, wait a second. This is her tribe."
Yeah. That's
So,
bizarre.
yeah. And my kids were very active. They both went to Montessori preschool, which I felt really
Oh,
sort of
wow.
cultivated a wonderful early learning experience. Lots of time outside. I mean, the curriculum has nature built into it, where their little preschool day, they were sent. They were hiking through the woods, and just it I strongly recommend any family, if they're looking into a form of education. I found Montessori to very much align with quantum principles, and allowing children to really, really come into learning just in a very organic way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at Montessori myself whenever that time. That's far away, but Montessori, homeschooling,
Right.
because if I take him home, I can control the environment around them, right? And that's going to
Right.
be huge. I can replicate what you just laid out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so to compare and contrast you guys, that when I'm hearing that, that is very abnormal for a child to grow up in that. And I don't want to say abnormal like it's bad. I want to highlight that it's amazing actually because I want to speak for most people. I and a lot of people, we grew up playing the video games. I from high school. That was all day, all day. After school, that's all I would do until night.
Hmm.
Even as a throughout my entire life like that, I would get I would ask for McDonald's, right? It's not to like shoot the parents down. It's
Right.
just you don't know what you don't know, right? And if these things are just not in our awareness, if we don't understand how light is truly intimately tied to our biology, of course, we're going to leave our kid in front of the iPad for 12 hours, right?
Right.
But
Because it
retrospectively,
seems so benign, right? It seems so benign.
it does, yeah.
It's not this sort of toxin that
Mhm.
you can see, that you can smell, some people don't even feel it. I mean, some people do feel it, but some people just are so sort of disconnected to themselves that they don't even feel what it's doing. It's that like slow trickle of demise, basically.
It's insidious
Mhm.
cuz I feel it now after having accumulated exposure. I can feel like residual brain fog and I'm
Mhm.
working on reversing all that having found it out.
Mhm.
And it's just crazy to think that some people never realize they
Yeah.
never get this in their awareness. So can you explain the key differences between your kids spending a lot of time outside eating the organic food? I'm sure y'all filtered your water too. Like all these
Well,
little changes
we
you implemented.
actually we have the oldest natural spring in the country
Wow.
is 10 minutes up the road, and they're a wonderful family that run it. It is a glacial water that comes down from Nova Scotia, and they're such wonderful people. It's called Simpson Spring in Massachusetts, and they accommodate me so much. I've
Mm.
asked them to send their water out and have it tested beyond what they already do, which is absolutely amazing. They've had it tested for deuterium. It's very low in deuterium because it's
Wow.
glacial water. So yeah, we're very blessed in that way to have access locally to some really phenomenal water. And that, like, I mean, that in and of itself is huge, right? To
Mhm.
For your children to grow up with wonderful, low deuterium water. It's just amazing.
Yeah, all those little things they add up
Hmm.
and I'm sure you can see that now.
Yeah.
How what are the names of your two boys?
My two boys. So my oldest is Logan. My youngest is Caden. They're both in college right now. They both go to the
Nice.
same school, which is, rather amusing to me, which is, it's
Mhm.
lovely. I think that they're, together at the same college. Um, One of the interesting things that I did with Logan when he was applying to colleges, I did this with both my boys. We did sort of a baseline standardized testing, the SAT. Like,
Mhm.
don't do any prep whatsoever. Just walk into the test, take the test cold so that we have the baseline. And they both did, and they both scored well. And then I said, okay, let's do some cool stuff. And so at the time, I had said to Logan, just follow my instructions for 1 month prior to the exam. And again, my kids, always wore blue blockers, so that wasn't, I didn't have to sort of beat them over the head to get them to be compliant with that. So
Mhm.
that was in order. I had him come off all video games for the entire month. And granted, it wasn't so much so anyway, but still, I said none, absolutely no video games for a month. Really reduce your tech use, reduce your phone use. And he's not really super into social media or anything like that anyway. He was a soccer player and played on 3 different teams, so he didn't have time basically for that. He would come home and just be too tired, for anything, and go to bed anyway. So, neither of my kids have ever been allowed cell phones in their rooms growing up. So for that month prior to the test, I had Logan come out in the morning with me, morning sunlight and ground. And I also basically had him eating salmon almost every day. So there was, the blocking the blue light at night, no video games, very limited cell phone use, sunlight, grounding. He got tons of physical activity already. The salmon, all of that. And he essentially, in that 1 month, jumped up 3 full merit scholarship levels. He absolutely crushed that test and came home. And he even said to me when he came home, he said, I think I aced the math portion. And I just kind of laughed. I knew that he was a strong math student, and I just kind of laughed and went, okay, great. And then when the scores came in, it was like, wow, you just catapulted to a different level. So that was really, really interesting, from my standpoint, because we had the control, we had previous test scores. And again, during that time period, no test prep. So it had nothing to do with learning how to hack the test. It had everything to do with optimizing his biology so that his brain could just fire the way that, that it's meant to. And essentially, that's what it is having these principles in place within your family. You are giving your kids the greatest advantage they will ever have to be the most optimal human and to function in the most optimal way, mentally, physically, spiritually. I mean, in my opinion, it's the greatest gift that I've ever given my children, and they're able, the emotional intelligence that they have, because their brains are working in a very clear way, the emotional intelligence that they have to navigate through this really sort of insane place that we are in society right now. I'm just so thankful, that they're able to actually look at things and think very, very critically about what they see. They're also able to look at their peers and absolutely recognize, oh, I see what's happening there. I mean, they have friends, most of their friends stay up all night long gaming. Most of their friends really struggle mentally.
Yeah. No, this is the same for me. A lot of my peers, Friday nights, I've never been into that stuff. First of all, going out on a Friday night until 2 a.m. But now knowing about quantum biology, I'm like, that is the absolute worst thing you could possibly do. You wake up, no, you go to sleep at 2 a.m., you miss the sunrise, you wake up, look at your screen, and you tell your body it's just to think about, like, not to go from benign to this blue light is really toxic, in addition to all the EMFs, fluoridated water that we drink. It's this is where I'm like really interested in your story because you just laid out these kids are living proof of these biological principles really taking place and positively impacting them. Uh, I'm sure they notice. Let me know if they've mentioned something like this. But when I'm around my peers, something I notice is like conversations seem to take place and fast forward, and then they're they're having conversations, but then the topics are really sporadic.
Mhm.
Like some people will go on one thread of conversation, and then another will ADHD style just go in a completely different. And I'm like, you guys are. It never goes, deep, and there's usually not like an in-depth connection being made, and there's usually a lot of reactivity, no critical thinking. It's kind of just like
Reactivity. Yeah.
go with the wave of your emotion. Like I'm sure they've noticed that. Have they talked about that to you or and
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
tell me
Yes.
about it.
Yes. Everything that you just said is exactly what they are experiencing. You
Mm,
know, many of their friends, some of their friends have gotten to a critical tipping point where so one of Logan's best friends, and this is a boy that they've been best friends since they were 6 years old. This young man Morgan, and I can speak about him. He gives me full clearance to speak about him and his experience. So Morgan was always a very sort of anxious kid. And we used to joke, Morgan's mom and I, we used to joke that Logan was Morgan's emotional support person. So Morgan wouldn't get on the bus unless Logan was on the bus with him. Morgan wouldn't play a sports team unless Logan was on the team with him. So, they just sort of established this wonderful connection, these two. And as they got into high school, Morgan's circadian rhythm got very dysregulated, as most young men who are, over addicted to tech, over gaming, circadian rhythm just gone. He was staying up all night. He was sleeping all day. He wasn't making it into high school. And so he actually stopped going to high school and essentially slept all day, stayed up on tech all night. He gained a tremendous amount of weight. He developed he had like a tic disorder,
mhm,
um, lots of emotional instability, and things were really spiraling out of control. And it got to a point that Morgan had come over. The boys, it was their senior year of high school, and Morgan had come over the house, and I physically saw that this boy was unwell. And I immediately went into my bedroom and I called his mother. And we've been friends long enough that I felt as though I could cross that line. And I said to her, I am really afraid. And she said, so am I. And she said, I don't know what to do. We have been to see the best doctors in the country. We live 30 minutes from Boston. She had access to the best of the best in the country. And she sought it out. She, as a very good mother, she sought out
mhm.
the best medical care for this boy. And all they continued to do is medicate, medicate, medicate. And it was just one on top of another, on top of another. And he was zombified. Basically, he was metabolically unwell, as you could physically see, and he was a complete zombie. And my son was alarmed because he could see his best friend just slipping into the abyss. And then one day Logan came home and he said to me, and it was shortly after that, and Logan came home and he said to me, Mom, Morgan said that he can't live like this anymore, and he asked if you could help him. And I said, let's do it. I'm all in. So I got Morgan. I called his mom, and she said, yes, like, he is 18. He can make these decisions for himself. And so I got Morgan set up to see Dr. Francisco Gutierrez, he is a quantum practitioner. So he's a primary care physician who practices, he's a decentralized physician practices these quantum principles within his practice for his patients. So we got Morgan set up with him because there were medications and there were things outside of the lifestyle coaching that I could give him. He needed to be medically supervised through this process. And so, Francisco worked with him on that end. I worked with him, on the lifestyle things, the blue blocking glasses. I got him the glasses. I got him him and his family set up with a red light panel. And, basically just sort of went over with him all of these, different quantum principles. And he was very, very open to it because he was not living his life. He was a slave to pharmaceuticals, and his entire life was a blur. And he knew that it didn't feel right to him. And so fast forward to 1 year. 1 year later, Morgan graduated high school. He got his license. He got a job and is working full time. He has lost 30 pounds. He is thriving, absolutely thriving. He is happy. He is living the life of a young, healthy man, and really experiencing life to the fullest. He and Logan, those two boys, they get in the Jeep and they go. They do snowmobiling trips. They do dirt biking trips. They do fishing trips. They put their money together. They bought a boat, so they go fishing all the time, and they have the trailer. They're thriving. They're thriving, and they're thriving together. And they have, there's a wonderful brotherhood with the two of them. But, I saw that, and that child was rescued from a lifetime, an absolute lifetime of disability and debilitation. And, I'm just so thrilled with him. And, we have another situation now with my younger son. Caden has a very good friend who is going through a similar circumstance. And it's like, okay, we know how to do this. We know what to do, and, he's also very open. That's the thing. These young people I feel they're much more open than some 40-year-olds that I coach. I can talk to a 17, 18, 19-year-old, and they're much more open to what I have to say than a 40-year-old, tech employee that is wondering, why they can't get out of bed. So.
No, so first of all, your sons are the example of this is what happens if you do it right from the beginning. They turn out to be amazing people. But then I talked about your son's friend, who it was a rocky road and it wasn't looking good. The trajectory was just god awful. But if you course correct as soon as you catch it, there's inherently grace in life when you course correct. You can screw it up for 17 years, biologically in your environment. But if you really walk this path, like you said, he turned it around in a year.
Right.
And his trajectory has completely flipped 180 degrees for the rest of his life, which is amazing. It's not too late. Like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, my kids have been under this environment for 20 years. It doesn't matter. Just start as soon as possible.
You know what? For young people, it's quick. It's quick. It
Yeah.
really is. I mean, every minute of sunlight exposure, you're leveling up. Like every minute is an improvement. So, the cumulative effect, it's absolutely amazing at how quickly I can see changes, and especially in kids. I mean, their mitochondria are designed for this.
Yeah.
And all of they respond very, very quickly to a proper environment, where they're not constantly in this cell danger response. All of a sudden their whole biology goes, oh, okay, all right, we can just calm down here.
Yeah. No, it's when I think of like a child that grows up like your sons, these people are going to grow up to be critical thinkers, well adjusted, well behaved, really productive.
They'll be the
Excuse
one
me?
percenters. They'll be the one percenters because
Mm-hmm.
the like I said, this is the greatest gift. This is the greatest uh, lifestyle that you could possibly give your kids. Like it is an unfair advantage compared to their peers, because if you take a child who unfortunately, and I wish I could save every one of them, and trust me, I try. I
Mm-hmm. Of
I
course.
try. But when you take a kid that's fully addicted to technology and fully circadian dysregulated and fully emotionally dysregulated, and then you take another child whose nervous system is functioning well, whose brain is functioning, physically functioning, you can't compare the two. You really can't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this really is uh, an unfair advantage in today's society.
My red pill was I was into health for selfish reasons, you want to look good, whatever. And when you go into fitness, you want to build muscle and stuff. And I came across nutrition as a balancing act. You want to be clean with your diet, don't dirty bulk. And then, so in this nutrition space, I discovered Weston Price's work, and that book is seminal because it really highlighted the contrast between these native people are super healthy, buz- to the point where it's bizarre. And then when these native people moved to,
Superhuman. It's
yeah,
superhuman.
superhuman, and that was normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved to where the white men, as said in the book, they moved to where the white men reside, and then they started degenerating like we have. And then once I was reading the book, and then I looked up and went into my everyday life, and I saw the consequences of the processed food, and now I know the lighting. I
Mm-hmm.
saw it everywhere, and I realized that what I was seeing as normal, there was another side to it called quantum health aligned, or aligned to nature basically. And I think of quantum health as like the modernization of what those people have always mastered and have always been naturally, you know, it just naturally made sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's integrating technology and the modern lifestyle into this era. So that book is just amazing for highlighting the contrast. You need to see the contrast because once you know that there's people that existed 100 years ago that were amazing, well behaved, well adjusted, and then you go out and you see what it is now, the implications are massive. And I'm sure as a dental hygienist, you've read that book, you know of his work, and
The
you see what
interesting
I'm
thing
seeing, right?
Right. The interesting thing about Weston A. Price is being in the dental field. I just expected and assumed that every doctor and every dental professional that I worked with and that I knew of Weston A. Price.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah.
he's unheard of in the dental world, and I was like, what? Like, he's the most famous dentist of all time, and
Mhm.
it's not taught. His principles and his book, none of his work is taught in dental school, which is
That's bizarre.
right.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. No, I have yet to meet a dentist that was taught Weston A. Price principles in dental school. Some biological, some general dentists. So all biological dentists start out. You have to go through a conventional dental school,
Hmm.
And and then some will sort of, the light will turn on and they'll leave conventional dentistry to go to biological dentistry, and only then will they actually get a little taste of Weston A. Price's work. But across the board, it's not anything that is taught to any dental professional at all.
Oh yeah. And then Jack Kruse comes in, that very group, and just completely flips it on its head, but it makes it so that Weston A. Price is still very much right. It's just we have to expand our context a little more because, you know, if you can replicate the diet, you can replicate the nutrients dense foods and all that. But those people obviously had nature as their foundation. They didn't have technology like we did, right? And so I'm sure you recognize the, like, while going from nutrition to quantum, that book still holds up even more so. And that's the fascinating part. So could you, like, give me your take on the quantum interpretation of his work?
I mean, it's foundational. Food isn't the primary driver, but food is important. The quality of the food is important, and my kids, I don't I don't buy cereal.
Yeah.
I just your children within the home. Your children will eat what food is available. So
Mhm.
if you don't want them to eat cereal, well, it's really easy to not buy cereal, And I mean, my kids grew up. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was lucky. I could afford organic food, and I could afford to seek out, highly nutrient dense food. But my kids grew up with me, roasting bone marrow.
Mhm.
My younger son would eat sardines every single day. Every single day. That was his choice food. That was his go-to. Sardines every single day. And he would munch on his favorite snack was a little bowl of frozen peas and frozen corn. Now, some could argue corn. Okay, maybe he shouldn't have had corn. Um, I wasn't going to split too many hairs with that, but so that was his little snack, or he would love to, when in season, frozen wild blueberries were just the go-to. So, and I would get the bone marrow from the farm, and I would actually take raw bone marrow, just scoop it right out of the bone, and then I would whip it with some local cultured butter and make this
Wow.
like raw bone marrow butter. And so anytime, we would make a steak or anything, just slather it
Wow.
in that. And my kids grew up having bone broth. I would always sort of, I always constantly, as they were growing up, had a crock pot of bones going at all time. And, they, of course, my kids, they love bread. So I had a bread machine, and I would bake them fresh bread, and they'd wake up in the morning, and I would sort of dump the ingredients into the bread maker, and they'd wake up with a fresh hot loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Um, I'm lucky. I had the time to do it, um, but it wasn't that hard either. You know,
Mhm.
it takes the same amount of energy, I think, to live this way and to prepare foods this way as it does other things. It's not
Yeah.
hard to grill a steak.
No, not at all. What so your kids are in college. I'm curious, first of all, have they dived deep into Dr. Cruz's work? Like, what do they want to do? Like, their life goal, their work? Is it something related to that, or
Yes. So,
okay?
yes. Uh, my kids have grown up, honestly, I think maybe they would have thought that Jack Kruse was a family member. I think the term Uncle Jack really plays out in this household anyway, because,
Yeah,
we would be out by the pool all day and I would have podcasts just, booming through the speaker. So they just grew up.
they
Like, I
just
think
wow.
through osmosis, they just grew up on, like, having this understanding of sunlight and electron transport. And
Yeah,
so, uh, and interestingly enough, my son Logan now, he is a senior at UMass and he's studying bioengineering,
nice.
which I love it. I love it because we can have these real sciencey conversations about deuterium, about, just all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And bioengineering, I almost feel like today, if Jack were to be a freshman entering college, he would be a bioengineering major because
Mm-hmm.
it brings together everything. It's the biology. It's very physics heavy. It's
Yes.
electrical engineering. It's sort of all of that. And Logan now says, "Mom, when Jack speaks, he sounds like a bioengineer. Like he's
Wow.
speaking my language." And that is, that's sort of all of that, bringing the biology and the engineering and the physics all together, which is exactly
Mm-hmm.
what Jack's work is. So, yeah, so Logan has a very, very deep level understanding of Jack's work. He loves it. He loves the podcasts. He was just beyond excited with the Jack Kruse Rick Rubin podcast.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, he has shared it with his classmates. He had one classmate, this kid Christian, who is a very, very bright kid. He's actually a pre-med. His dad is a doctor, and he's pre-med. And so Logan sort of turned him on to Jack's work.
Nice.
Christian sent Logan a text the other day and said, "Dude, I need to buy you dinner because this information just changed my life." Right?
Yes, we did it.
So that's what you do. Like, you bring the young people, you give them this information, and they're thirsty for it, and they're open to it. They're kids come into this house. Every kid that comes into this house gets a pair of these. I buy these
Nice.
by the box load. Every kid that comes through the door, I say to everyone, "Do you have blue blocking glasses?" And if the answer is no, at this point they all have them. They come into our house and they see the way that we live. And enough kids have spent summers here, have traveled with us, and they come in and they love opening the refrigerator where, most of the lights are disconnected, but the lights that are there are covered in red tailgate tape. So they open the refrigerator and it's red, and the only light bulbs that are on in this house are red light bulbs at night. And, kids cycle through here all the time using the red light panels, and so I had a group of boys at the house. I think it was last summer. These are probably 6 or 7, 17, 18-year-old boys. And they all stood in the kitchen and they said, "Everything you've ever told us is the truth. You've never
Mm,
been wrong, Kel. You've never been wrong." And so now they all have switched out their bedroom lights to red light bulbs. They all have the blue blockers. It's just, if you share the information and you explain the science, and you don't even have to get very deep in the science, but if you
yeah.
just explain it, they're very, very open to it. We were on vacation once with Morgan, Logan's friend Morgan,
Yeah.
and we were up at the lake. This was years ago when they were younger, and we're out on the lake all day, and he had his sunglasses on, and I wasn't going to sort of, overstep, basically. So at the end of the day, he was sunburned
Yeah.
terribly. And I said to him, "Hey, do you understand, like, why you sunburned today?" And he said, "Yeah, I forgot my sunblock." And I said, "No, actually, it's far more interesting than that." And he said, "Really?" And so I explained to him, blocking the sun. And he looked at me and he said, "Wow, that makes so much sense." Okay. And I said to him, "And the way to cure that sunburn, the antidote to that, is you need to be out during the sunset today." And so he did. He stayed out for sunset. And the next day he was like, wow, like my sunburn is gone,
Yeah.
and I've never seen him in sunglasses again.
Wow. I'm so glad and happy to hear that there are other 22-year-olds that are coming into this stuff. Because sometimes I feel like I'm crazy because
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like the only one in my like social circle. People will look at my phone and it's red, and they're like, "What the hell?" And
Right.
I'm like, "Ugh, I don't even want to get into it right now. It's explaining everything, but
Right.
this is like a bright future that I'm seeing, and
Mm-hmm.
how your son spread it to Christian, and now Christian's going to become a doctor. He's pre-med,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to have his own ripple effect, and it's just like all coalescing in my mind, and
Right.
it makes me excited.
It's the pebble in the pond. You have
Yeah.
to be the pebble in the pond, and I feel like that's what Dr. Kruse was for all of us. He was that pebble in the pond, and now
Hmm.
there's this ripple effect, and hopefully it will become a tsunami effect. You know, um, because this is vital. I mean, this
It
is
is.
just vital information, and it's almost funny to call it, quantum health. It's human health. Essentially,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
human, right? It's sort of foundational human health. My in-laws grew up in the Azores, the Portuguese islands of the Azores.
Mm,
Much like how the 1800s was in this country. They both grew up. They did not have electricity. They did not have plumbing. They had a dirt floor, one room home. And my father-in-law, often told my boys of how when he was a teenager, he would sleep on the beach and he would wake up to the waves, tickling his feet. And that the Azores, they're volcanic islands. So
wow.
when there's talk of El Salvador, in these the lava tubes underneath in these volcanic islands, having very strong magnetism, that was just an amazing environment for my in-laws to grow up in, and they're in their 80s and they're amazing. They
Yeah.
are amazing, and I feel as though, like, just an environment like that built such a robust system that they can move into their, elder. I mean, they're well into their elderly years at this point now, and they're great. And my husband's family that grew up that way, um, they all lived to well into their 100s. I mean, my husband's grandfather lived to be 107, and it was a good 107.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't. We have 20-year-olds today that couldn't function as well as this man did at 107 years old. So there's so much. There's so much to this, and it's just so important.
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting older people because what I hear a lot is a person is 30 years old and they've gained weight, their back is hurting all the time, and it's called getting older now.
Right.
And I'm like, bro, you're 30. You're
Yeah.
30 years old. Like, why is that old now? It used to be like
Wow.
60, turn to 50, it's coming. And even my 20-year-old friends, they're talking about joint pain too. They're talking, it's creeping down. And that's why I'm like hell bent on spreading this stuff, because it's only going to keep getting worse. We've all seen the graphs of chronic diseases, every single one of them in various, body systems. It's all showing an exponential curve. And so what I'm seeing now, it terrifies me because it's of what I'm going to see. It'll be like teenagers, and I'm sure you, with your sons bringing friends, you see the effects in younger people too. And want to really shout out Weston Price again, because he really set the context, right? The older people, that your in-laws and your sons, they grew up pretty similarly. One was more primitive, and your sons had technology and modern lifestyle integrated in their lifestyle, right? And so you don't need, it's not fancy, it's just specific, it's very clear, and the fruit of it is amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
Sunlight is free. We all have equal access to it. We all have equal opportunity to sunlight. It's, whether or not you seize that opportunity, and that's all a choice. I think, you highlighting this information and getting this information out there is vitally important, but it's important to take action. It's important to take this information and put it into play, because it is a game changer, and it's quick. It's quick. When I review health histories all day, it can be rather depressing. It really can, because the list of medications for people continues to get longer and longer. And the patients get younger and younger. There are children, small children, 7, 8, 9-year-olds that are being put on SSRIs and anti-anxiety medications. And that is a lifetime. That is that's
heartbreaking.
life, and I am also seeing 40, 50-year-old people being put on ADHD medications, which, it's really alarming. And so when I review a health history, one of the questions that I ask every single patient every time I see them is, how much time are you spending outside? And they look at me like, well, that's not on an intake form. Like, why do you ask? And I say, because that is a very important health metric. How much time are you spending outside? And it causes them to actually think, to when you actually have to think to be able to provide an answer, that's when hopefully there's a little bit of recognition. Like, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes a day. And when they come into my office and the lights aren't on and the computer screen is red and I have my blue blocking glasses on, and most of my patients will remark, like, what a calm environment it is. And it's like, I'm not like running spa music and have a fountain in the corner. It's just, like, I mean, it is what it is. It's a dental office, right? But they feel it. They feel differently when they're in my operatory than when they're in the other parts of the office. And a lot of them are now starting to say that. So if they move from my operatory to the other, they will say, like, those lights are so harsh, and it's not as relaxing in here. And now some patients are even saying, like, can you make sure the lights are off in the other room, because I don't want to go in there.
Nice.
So, just for everyone out there, take every opportunity that you can to share these little bits of information, because they matter. Every opportunity to help someone, take that opportunity because it matters, and that's how we're going to, as a society, move forward. That's the only way, is to pay it forward, move it forward, and bring everyone with you.
Share that wealth. So we've laid out a lot of stories, right? Of this person's life changing, this person's. Let's like give people a quick overview. If you had a client come in, you see their health history, and tell us what you would usually see. Of course, they'll probably say something like, never see a sunrise. Yeah, I'm on my phone at night. Technology's everywhere in the house. I don't filter my water. How do you reverse all that? Like without, giving specific health advice, just a general outline of how we would implement this stuff.
So, I mean, at this point, the people that I interact with, they know me well enough to trust me, which is great, so they trust me. So I can, step forward and say different things. They also witness my health, my mental and physical health is on display. I'm in my mid 50s. My husband is in his mid 50s. And, I feel as though we clearly represent what this lifestyle can do for you, and my children as well. My children represent what raising children in this way, which doesn't require that much extra work, right? So, I like, that's where I feel like I make the most headway, is that, someone sitting in the chair will say something to me like, oh, well, that's easy for you. That's easy for you because you're much younger than I am. And I'm like,
yeah. Nah,
we're the same age, and people were like, what? So, it's, just being the example. I feel like, and for my children as well, being the example, because people pay attention. They pay attention to your actions. They pay attention to what they're seeing, and all of that information they sort of take in, and it means something, basically. So
yeah, you can like try to argue the information, but you can't argue with the results in time and space.
Right.
You can never take that away from someone. The embodiment, the fruits we've bared, that's always ours to display, and that's ultimately like the ultimate evidence. There's nothing more convincing than seeing someone in front of you embody that, be that sharp, well-adjusted person, and then to be that mirror for you, because then you realize, whoa, I'm not that. And it calls for you to change.
Right.
Yeah.
I think also just sort of, I had a patient. He was 30 years old, and when I reviewed his health history, he said that he had just recently been put on statins, and I said, really? I said, well, can you explain why? And he said, oh, I don't know. They just told me that that I should be on them, and I said, well, what was your, just, not that I believe cholesterol really has anything to do with it, but that is the, the conversation, basically. So I said, well, what was your cholesterol? His cholesterol was under 200. And they put him on statins prophylactically because they said, well, maybe your cholesterol will go up as, now that you're 30, and so you should be on them prophylactically. And he felt horrible on them. And I just looked at him and I said, like, do you realize you're being poisoned? And, all of a sudden he was it's sometimes just sort of pointing out the obvious that maybe they hadn't thought of. And, when you sort of like shine light on something and go, well, do you think maybe you should continue that? Then they're like, well, maybe I shouldn't. So.
Yeah. I like the way Jack's very just outspoken, does not care. You're like,
Right.
you like play along a little bit and then you drop it on
Right.
them, which
Right.
is, I appreciate that too.
I find it works, it's my tactic, I guess.
Yeah. So Kelly, what drives you to keep spreading this information? Because I've found this stuff has given me purpose in one area of my life. This is it's hard to be nihilistic while having a deep sense of a mission and a purpose. And I'm sure from your lens, being around children, being a mother, it gives you a purpose. So could you share that with us, the thing that drives you to keep putting this forward and keep sharing?
Because I know how well it works. I know, as I said earlier, that this is the foundation of truth.
Hmm.
And it's reproducible over and over and over. And I will say, helping people is the most addictive thing
Yeah,
on the planet. It
very
really
right.
is. I mean, talk about having that sense of purpose. That is one of, the life forces for all of us, is that, every day I am serving, and that is important. And that is what continues to give me the energy to just continue to get this message out there, because over and over and over and over again, I have seen this work with everyone, young,
Hmm.
old, children, socioeconomic, demographic. It does not matter. We are all humans. We are all tied to sunlight. We are all tied to the earth. And that is not a mistake. That is the divine design. And, now watching my kids sort of bring this forward as well
Hmm.
has been insanely rewarding.
Fulfilling.
It really is. And just to have people come back to me over and over and over again saying, you changed my life. Like, you really changed my life and set me on the right sort of trajectory. And just, and sometimes with anyone, sometimes it's just sort of planting that little seed and sparking that little bit of curiosity. And hey, why don't you Google photobiomodulation? Why don't you
Hmm.
Google circadian disruption? And it just having that purpose in knowing that what you're sharing is changing lives in the most positive, beautiful way. There's no stopping it. I mean, I will never stop sharing information. I will never stop seeking information, ever.
Hmm.
That is also what just keeps pushing me. Every one of Jack's blogs is a challenge.
Those are tough.
They're a challenge, but a challenge in the best possible way, and it's like, okay, let me figure out what I have to do to sort of get through this information and pull it together, and make my way, through this blog. And if it takes reading it 10 times, then it takes reading it 10 times. If it takes listening to the Rick Rubin podcast 3 or 4
Yeah.
times, then so be it. Because every single time you do, you come away with another little nugget of, like, mind-blowing information. And so it's a wonderful quest to be on. And it's really, really fun. And it's really, really fulfilling to share it.
Absolutely. I share a lot of the same sentiments, and I'm
Yeah.
happy to share your story and pass it forward for all the. I want to get the young people in
Hmm.
on this. It starts with us, and then our kids will be well on their way. So
Exactly. And
there is.
my coaching patients that I work with, and I say to them, there are people out there that are, there are these wealth management firms that teach you generational wealth. Well, I'm here to teach you
Hmm.
generational health, because
Well
your
said.
creates a healthy family, and so on and so on and so on. And so my quest is for my future grandchildren, right? So that my kids can be healthy and be able to reproduce, because that's getting harder and harder every day as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I don't want my family to have to face that. I don't want our family to sort of end. And not, I mean, that's the ultimate goal of the birth of every human. The ultimate goal is to reproduce. And if we're losing that, and so we're basically losing the progression
Yeah.
of humanity. So it's become my life's work, and my life's love of work. So
Amen. Yes. So you have a red light panel behind you,
I do.
and I am very curious because, you know, red light panels are a dime a dozen,
They
but
are.
it's rare to have someone that understands this paradigm and then makes the panel. So
Right.
how does your red light panel stand out? How does it positively affect us? Could you give us a quick rundown on that?
So basically, I came into this not from like, oh, let me just like make a product and sell a
Yeah, yeah.
product. It was like, okay, what do I want? What am I looking for with what I know, and what I
Mhm.
know that I need, and what I know that I want? And I didn't find it in what was
Yeah.
available. And so, with the help of some good friends, and some people that had good belief in me, and a little poke, like, you should
Mhm.
do this. Hey, you should do this. And I said, you know what? I will do this. And so I did. And I was very quiet about it for quite a while,
Mhm.
because I thought, I need to make sure that everything is exactly how I want it. And I feel like I'm there. And that's why I recently, I had been working locally with my patients, having amazing results with implementing photobiomodulation into their lives. Uh, Certainly not replacing sunlight in any way,
Mhm.
supplementing
Supplementing, right?
photonic energy, essentially. And my patients responded really, really well, and it's been again, like another way that I've been able to uh, enrich people's lives, and touch their lives, and improve their lives, and improve their health, through hard work. And the panels they're very high quality. I'm very proud of them. They're very high quality. I test every single one. I don't leave anything to chance.
Mhm.
Don't trust, verify is a statement that you
Correct.
hear often. And I
Mhm.
take that very seriously. And so I don't just take a panel and just drop ship to anyone in the country, which is exactly why my website isn't up, because
Yeah.
to I have to figure out what that will look like, and for me to be able to maintain the integrity, and the reason why I did this. So that's what I'm sort of trying to figure out, um, what that's going to look like. But every panel comes to me first. I test it with my meters. I make sure that it is safe, and then I distribute to patients, who are looking use something like this, because if that panel isn't safe, it is not providing you with a therapy. It's, can actually be damaging. So it's important that when you use something, when you seek out something as a therapy, you have to make sure that it is what it is. And I tell patients all the time, light is a medicine, and it functions as a medicine within the system. It has a biological effect. And you wouldn't go on Amazon and drop ship a prescription medication to your home and then use it however you thought. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you take it 3 times a day. Maybe you take it, you know what I mean? Like, it is very specific. It's very nuanced. It requires some thought by a practitioner, by a clinician who understands it and understands your circumstance and where you live and your lifestyle and what are your acute or chronic conditions that you're concerned with. So, so that's essentially how I work with people at this point. And, it's growing at a rate that I could never have expected, which is a wonderful problem to have, right? So, I'm in the process of sort of navigating exactly what that looks like in order for me to maintain what I'm comfortable with and what I want this to be for everyone. So at this point, people that are interested are emailing me directly, and then I am personally interacting with people and working through things with them and getting them exactly what they need and teaching them exactly how they should be utilizing photobiomodulation as an adjunct to the quantum principles of living this lifestyle.
Wonderful. Oh, yes. It's been a great 90 minutes. This has been wonderful, and thank you for like the stories, because I'll have podcasts that are very science centric, but you need personal experiences as well, right? And you've been surrounded by that, both on older people of all ages. Like you said, this is the foundation of truth, right? Truth doesn't depend on any condition, so that's why it applies to literally anybody, from a newborn to a 100-year-old. This stuff is equally valid, and that's why it's so powerful. So
very, very powerful.
Indeed. All right, Kelly. Well, do you have any last final remarks before we close out?
I said to my mother not long before she passed away, and she was going to live in a facility, in a nursing facility, and I said to her, every minute you spend outside is a minute longer you will live.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, okay. So I say that to everyone. Every minute you spend outside is a minute longer you will live. You're gaining health span as well as lifespan by doing so. So I stress that to everyone all day, every day. Seek the light to keep the light. That's what it's all about.
Love it. Awesome. Well, you guys, that was a blast. I'm definitely going to hit Kelly up to probably interview one of her sons. I want to interview Morgan specifically.
Yes.
He has a hell of a story to share.
He really does. He is the poster child.
Yes, he is.
What quantum living can do, without question.
Yeah, got to hear it from the man himself.
Right.
So awesome! It's been a blast, Kelly, and I hope you all had some great takeaways from this episode. And I hope to see you next time on the Lighthouse Podcast. Cheers.